Welcome to the Thought Decoders YouTube channel where we teach you logic and we teach you how to apply it. We teach you how to clearly state and articulate your faith. And we study the defense of the faith, Christian faith, that is. So today we have a treat. We're starting a book study over Edward J. Carnell's Introduction to Apologetics. Edward J. Carnell was a philosopher and theologian whom William Lane Craig mentioned in our recent interview. Uh, he influenced Dr. Craig's apologetic method and inspired a lot of other apologists. So we want to take a look at this text. We will start with the first chapter. Recently, a friend of mine watched the interview and he said, "You know what? I went out and bought the book, or I'm going to buy the book that Bill Craig mentioned." And so I said, "That's a good idea. I might as well do a video about this first chapter." So this chapter is called "The Practical Human Predicament." How then can man be just with God? Or how can he be clean that is born of a woman? Behold, even the moon has no brightness, and the stars are not pure in his sight. How much less man that is a worm, and the Son of Man that is a worm? Job. I don't know where exactly in Job that is, but that was pretty powerful. The fact that man is both soul and body makes for happiness and misery. That's such a powerful sentence. I'll keep going and I'll pause to reflect. On the one hand, there are pleasures. Those of the body come from proper emotions, while those of the mind come from reflection, memory, and anticipation. Plato rightly names the latter set as the better. For the transitional character of emotional delights vitiates their candidacy for the office of being the higher good. On the other hand, both body and soul afford man untold pain and misery. All who have submitted to the plying of the scalpel or to the grinding of the drill willingly testify to the reality of physical pain, both as its intensity, both as to its intensity and severity. But the sorrow of the soul is a malady more to be dreaded by man than physical discomfitures. Many are the amputees who have endured the removal of a limb without the palliation of anesthesia, simply because the will, dictated to by a faith filled soul, determined that life was worth living. While others in the prime of health, replete with wealth and goods, have resorted to suicide to escape the demands which society placed upon them during their 80 years. In other words, severe as physical pain is, if the soul sees tranquility ahead as its possession, it is enabled to bear the burden with hope. Peace of mind is the highest form of human happiness. Okay, so what did he do in this on this page? So he seems to point to uh, the separation of the body and the soul, and that the body has its pleasures, which come from emotions, and uh, the mind has its pleasures, which comes from reflection, memory and anticipation. And then I guess he focuses on anticipation at the end when he says that someone who has a limb cut off without anesthesia, uh, they do so by their, I guess, anticipation for better days, for tranquility. So peace of mind is the highest form of human happiness. I think that's what he wants to point out. The sources of the soul sorrow. The sources of soul sorrow. I'm sorry, I read that incorrectly. Qua body, man is an animal, while qua spirit, he is a celestial being. As a creature of time and space, man is limited by death, while as a creature of spirit, man is able to live eternally. Meditation upon these conflicting realities is a basic cause of soul sorrow. So, the pressure which results from the consideration of what man is as an empirical self and what he ought to be as an ideal self creates friction. The friction, if severe enough, brings suicide. This is very serious. So there's a internal conflict between the limitation of man. Man is not just a living being, but he is a living being that is conscious. And uh, once you become conscious of your death or imminent demise or future death, it can bring it can cause despair because there's nothing you can do about it. You just know you will die someday. And it's that friction that what he says is what is a cause of suicide. So, section A, the problem of the body. Solomon, wisest of mortal men, expressed the problem of the body well. For that which befalls the sons of men befalls beasts. Even one thing befalls them. As the one dies, so dies the other. Yea, they have all one breath, and man has no preeminence above the beast, for all is vanity. Ecclesiastes 3:19. The body is an incredibly precise organism, a wonderful masterpiece of art and symmetry. One need only reflect casually upon the mystery of his beating heart to appreciate the Davidic utterance, I will give thanks unto thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Psalm 139:14. So Solomon there says that human beings die just like beasts do. David comes along and says that human beings were created with carefulness and with consideration to the details. At least that's my summary of what David said there. But the marvelous frame of man is also a source of human woe. Men are born into the world without covenant or consultation and are obliged to make the best of the body which is issued to them, regardless of its condition. We are all born not quite perfect, disfiguring birthmarks, hair clip, hair lip, cleft palate, crossed eyes, knock knees, club feet, or poorly aligned teeth. make us self-conscious and inferior. Fortunately, reconstructive surgery can intercede in these cases. But what of the weak hearts, the congenitally crippled, and the cancerous? Without fear of confutation, we may assert that these are a source of sorrow. The end of this sorrow is death. From the time that man purchases his first pair of glasses to strengthen weak eyes till the physician nods his head to indicate that nothing more can be done to save the body. The reality and fear of death are ever before man. This is a source of anguish. So here I guess we can say that the this paragraph is about uh we although our bodies are unique, they are amazing and wonderful, and the human body does all these amazing things. The intricacy of the human brain is second to none. Nothing else in the universe is as complex as the human brain. It's the most complex organism uh, in the universe. Uh, but we are still born rather with defects, defects of our eyes, of our structure, facial features, of our organs, of our body systems, the function and the structure, malformation, and dysfunction uh, within ourselves. This causes us another dichotomy between our ideal self, how we think our body should look, uh, how we want to look, how we want to feel, the health we would desire to have, and the health we actually have in a lot of cases. So this is a source of sorrow. The problem of the universe. Not only is the body incompetent to act as a vehicle to bear up the eternal ideals of the soul, but the universe which makes up the environment for the body is so viciously set against man that the latter's situation seems aggravated, almost to hopelessness. Let us trace some of the scientific discoveries which have contributed to the situation. Number one, with the discovery of the telescope by Galileo in 1609, the boundaries of reality were pushed out to infinity. In relation to this vast expanse, man appeared to be nothing. Science has made it impossible to believe in a loving Father Almighty. The vastness of the universe that modern astronomy discloses is appalling in its emptiness of anything that even suggests a father's care for human beings. Number two, the next step was the mechanical universe, conceived by Descartes and perfected by Spinoza. The notion that the universe is a vast machine is yet an axiom of science. Modern science has been characterized by the abandonment of teleological interpretation for description and explanation in terms of natural law. Man was now reduced to a cog in a vast, purposeless machine. Purposes gave way to mathematics, human will and foresight to immutable, and inflexible mechanical order. Throughout the whole stretches of infinity, and stone and plant and animal. Nowhere in this universe was there another being like man. Nowhere a being who felt and suffered, loved and feared and hoped, who thought and knew. Man was alone, quite alone, in a vast and complex cosmic machine. Gone were the angelic hosts, gone the devils and their pranks, gone the daily miracles, supernatural intervention, gone even was man's imploring cry of prayer. Man became a mere part of this vast machine, its finest flower, perhaps, perhaps a cosmic accident and mistake to that eternal cry of the soul. Why? The answer came: ignoramus, nay, ignorabimus. So here we see Carnell mentioning that scientific discoveries did not help to make us feel special. The emptiness of space, the mechanical nature of natural causes, this causes that and that causes that, seems to make our significance, our purpose within the universe seem uh, absent. So if we reflect, we started out with there's a separation in man, an internal conflict that's caused by his ideals and his reality. Part of the reality is the dysfunction of the body, its malformity, the desire to be different than the way one is. In fact, uh, maybe you have heart problems or facial or disformities, etc., etc. Or once when we study the universe, when we study science, we find a universe that is connected through a series of natural causes. And nowhere do we see uh, heaven. We don't see God when we look into the universe. We see an empty void, and it makes it seem like we're here alone, and that doesn't help this tendency towards anguish, this existential angst that is within us. It it rises up, or it causes emotions of loneliness and isolation to bubble up within our souls. And we cry probably like Paul did in Romans 7, a wretched man that I am, who shall save me from this body of death. If the whole world if the whole has no purpose, can there be purpose in any part? 3. Evolution joined with astronomy to explain man's place in an atheological universe. Theology is purpose, so a theological universe is a purposeless universe. In 1871, Darwin published his The Descent of Man, in which proof was offered for the biological evolution of man. Being no longer a crowning act of creation, man must now swallow his pride and meditate upon the fact that he has oozed from the slime along with the beetles, snails, and weasels. But the latter creatures are more fortunate than man, for he is aware both of his ignoble ancestry and of his dreaded end, death. Thus, we have further commentary on what Pascal has referred to as the misery and grandeur of man. I think that's an interesting point and of emphasis, because it shows that when we study our origins, the scientists are telling us that we came from bugs, and there's a common ancestor. So we're aligned with monkeys and wolves and beetles and rats and plants and bacteria, and we all trace back to the slime, to the primordial sea, as it were. Uh, Jim Tour wasn't around then to dispel that myth, but now we but I digress. So continuing. 4. Climaxing science's interpretation of the universe and its relation to human values is the second law of thermodynamics, according to which the amount of available energy in the universe is diminishing. In time, all energy will be evenly distributed and hence useless. This means that the world someday will be unfit for life. In the light of such wholesale slaughter, there is to be realized in life what Shakespeare confined to the stage. What is life? It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. In short, modern man appears to be but a grown up germ, sitting on a gear of vast cosmic machine, which is some day destined to cease functioning because of lack of power. Is Solomon to be ignored when he says, I have seen all the works that are under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind? Ecclesiastes 1 and 14. So he's saying that upon reflection, we can see that our ideals of reality conflict with our present knowledge of reality. We think we should be more beautiful than we actually find ourselves, more popular, more intelligent, more loved, more successful, more productive, more healthy. We should be slim and not overweight. We should be tall and not short. Uh, uh, we should be lighter and not darker. We may be sick and find ourselves desiring to be healthy. We may be cancerous or have heart failure, or have dysfunctional features within our faces, cleft nose and sickle cell and different features. Secondly, when we look to science, science doesn't help us out of this predicament. The fact that we are death is inevitable, that we will die just like a beast, but the difference will be that we wanted to live, that we are aware of our own emotional states, and we can reflect, we have memory, we can anticipate the future. However, we will die just like a beast. uh, Science doesn't help us, because once we study science, we see a universe of emptiness. We see the laws of thermodynamics that says that energy within a closed system is not continuous, that it must end, and it must dissipate. We see discoveries that tells us that we came from a primordial ooze, a sea, where germs and bacteria and lightning struck, and and that all living things have common ancestors, which takes the pride and the dignity of man, and literally makes us cousins of apes, cousins of monkeys, and relatives with lower forms of life. Uh, so this is the situation that we find ourselves in, and we don't have help. But the more we look at the natural world, the more it robs us of the dignity and worth of our ideals. The practical human predicament, the nature of the soul's sorrow. The core of man's dilemma is the problem of relating his insatiable desire for self preservation to the realities of a death doomed body and an impersonal universe. So he summarizes the points he made in the previous sections. It's the death is inevitable, it's that the universe is impersonal. A. The union of the real and the ideal. In thought, man can transcend the contingencies of time and space. He can dream of a better body and a better universe than those which exist in reality. Meditation upon the union of the real and the ideal brings misery. Man appears to be literally suspended between heaven and earth, between the ideal and the real, between the desirable and the actual. He longs for a strong body, but the lethal germs cut short the hope. He prays for another day to live, but the scythe of death cuts him down. He trusts in marble monuments, only to have the earth beneath them buckle and crumble. Whatever man achieves, the universe seems determined that the weeds of time and indifference cover it over. Every cultural expression has the same verdict written over it. This is doomed to decay. What sense is there in such a universe? And who is responsible for this monstrous situation? Therefore is my spirit overwhelmed within me. My heart within me is desolate. The failure to be able to unite the real and the ideal presses home to man a strange, impelling sense of the futility and the absurdity of life. There is no castle that man can build which will last forever. For regardless how deep the foundation, how thick the walls, how immense the superstructure, the same decree of decay is written over it, as is written over everything which man undertakes. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, Solomon said. So it's like he's continuing with this theme that nothing we do will last. Not our bodies, not our thoughts, not even our ideals. One day, as uh, Edward J. Cornell is, he's gone. He's dead. But we're reading his writing. But his life was put out like the flame of a candle. Death took him way out of the world, and this is the predicament that we find ourselves in. The fear of death. Section B. The incongruity between man's desire for life and the reality of physical death is the most maddening problem of all. Although he sees the handwriting on the wall, man yet refuses to think that death is his final destiny, that he will perish as the fish in the fowl, and that his place will be remembered no more. Man wills to live forever. The urge is written deep in his nature. The nature of soul sorrow from the fear of death is plain. It is that spiritual uneasiness which is left in the heart of man when he lines up the ideals that he longs for within the reality of things as they are. Man longs for eternal life. That is the ideal. He will die soon. That is the real. The gross incompatibility between these two sides of man makes the piecing together of life's jigsaw puzzle a staggering assignment. Indeed, and not a few are those timid souls who, seeing only a slight chance of success, succumb to disappointment, anxiety, despondency, desperation, and melancholy. The cure for soul sorrow, section 3. Man can elect to take one of four paths as he seeks to wend his way through the labyrinth of human sorrow. Let us examine these. A. The four alternatives. One can leap off the side of a cliff if he so chooses, but somehow he instinctively rejects this course of action. Not only is the suicide a coward, but also the act itself cuts across man's basic urge to live. Man is too much of a problem solver to dismiss the dilemma of life by blowing out his brains. 2. One can ignore the problem and go on living as if life had meaning, but goodness knows why. This avenue is the one which the many tread. Indeed, for few are those who candidly face the question of existence for exactly what it is worth. But more serious minds reject the notion because it is but an ignoration, not a solution of the problem. It may be that indifference to the issue is the one state in which man must not be found, for the stakes involved in life and death may be high. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his life? Mark 8:36. 3. One can admit that since we know on good rational grounds that the universe is unfriendly to our values, the only manly thing to do is to make best of a bad situation. There's no virtue in playing the role of a whining child and making the problem worse than it is. This is the way of the pessimist, a route becoming more and more popular to the modern mind. Bertrand Russell calls it confident despair. One cannot dismiss this alternative with a sigh, for as common sense tells us, if the universe is unfriendly to our values and ideals, then we must, if we are honest with the facts and if we still desire to keep living, be stoic and put up with an unfortunate arrangement for which we are not responsible. On this view, however, no real reason can be advanced to dissuade people from committing suicide. This may appear to be only an insignificant point, but a little reflection will show that open suicide will make for the destruction of society itself. We should have more to say about this later. 4. The final alternative is to question seriously the validity of the pessimistic interpretation of the facts of the universe. The conservative will elect to follow this course of action, for he is convinced that the universe makes enough sense and gives enough hope to man that the latter need not descend to a straw grasping, confident despair interpretation of the course of reality. If the Christian can succeed in establishing this view of things, he will have restored hope to man. B. The ingredients of the cure for soul sorrow. Man's whole trouble is that he cannot find a proper meaning for life. A pessimistic meaning of the universe yields anxiety and despair in the soul. The cure for soul sorrow, then, is that meaning of life which can restore man's faith in things. Number one, the first ingredient which the cure must have is the hope for personal immortality. Man's uncompromising desire for self preservation forces him to reject as insufficient any meaning to reality which excludes the possibility of personal immortality. Death is man's sword of Damocles, and until it is removed, complete happiness is unattainable. This is the reason why all the classic philosophers have been content to think in but one dimension. This dimension is immortality. For the soul of man was made for eternal felicity and will not rest until it rests in its eternity. It is in the light of this context that the Christian will press home the promises of Christ's gospel. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have eternal life. John 3:16. How one may intelligently hold to this hope in the light of the impending death both of the body and of the universe is a question which we shall face later on. At this point, let us rest in the fact that man needs immortality to be happy. But immortality cannot be secured until man has made peace with his universe. If the universe is not such as will bear up the possibility of immortality, the actuality of it can never be established. In addition to our hope for immortality, then, we must have a rational view of the universe to serve as a frame of reference in terms of which immortality can be made meaningful. By rational, we mean logically intelligible. Let us be clear that a rational view of life is the least that a rational man will settle for. The Christian may claim no exemption from this rule. Either Christianity is logically intelligent or it is meaningless. There is no tertium quid. If the possibility of immortality is the first ingredient, the actuality of rational view of the universe is the second. 3. Granted that we need immortality, granted also that the satiation of this need is contingent upon a rational view of the universe. Yet there is not even a more basic problem than these. The fundamental question is, what is truth? Until we know what truth is, we shall be unable to recognize a rational universe when we see one. The necessity for truth is obvious. Man, in his zeal to establish immortality, is tempted to construct artificial worldviews which make for the hope of eternal life. This hope at any cost gesture is fatal. However, for it commits the fallacy of thinking that wishing will make it so. Unless there is some check on proposed rational systems. Therefore, they will so abound in number and style that man will be left without a criterion by which to distinguish the worthy from the unworthy. In sum, Without hope, nothing has real meaning. Without a rational view of the universe, hope cannot be secured. But without a knowledge of what truth is, a rational universe cannot be recognized. In due course, we shall attempt to show that Christianity and Christianity alone can make peace with three conditions sine qua non for human happiness. For a recapitulation, man is a creature who is both in the process of history and who yet transcends history at every point. This involvement and transcendence is the cause of that friction in the soul of man, which, if unchecked, results in pessimism and suicide. What plagues man is death. He is never sure but that his existence is analogous to the sheep in the fold, which receives food day by day, but which in the end is slaughtered and eaten. But man cannot even be dumb when he goes to the slaughter, for he is a rational being. He lives in an ideal as well as an actual world. The only solution to his problem is to set up a voracious interpretation of the universe in which the real and the ideal are united in such a way that personal immortality is rendered possible. Oscar Hammerstein II has given a classical statement of the practical human predicament in his lyrics of Show Bolt. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Tote that barge, lift that bell, get a little drunk, and you land in jail. I gets weary and sick of trying. I'm a tired of living and scared of dying. But old man River, he just keeps rolling along. Not only do those who lug bales of cotton look for that stream called the River Jordan, but so do all men who face the loneliness and separation of death's call. Be the solution. Jesus Christ has given the immortal answer to the practical human predicament. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Both the statement and the solution of the problem are now before us. What is obviously lacking, however, is the clarification of the connection between them. Showing this connection will occupy us in the succeeding chapters. So that's it for chapter 1. We can summarize his the practical predicament, the human predicament, in terms of how our discoveries about the world do not necessarily bring us peace of mind. The impersonal universe and the conflict between our ideal and our body and the real, the ideal and the real, creates anguish. Suicide is one form of escape, and we fear death. There is some type of tension between those two ideas, because if death is the problem, then why would you commit suicide? It seems like for many, death is not the problem. It's life itself. It's the the conflict between the ideal and the real, and people would rather not be conscious of the idea and the real, and they in the conflict between them. Uh, and so what they do is they decide to kill themselves, uh, and so that's their way out. But so the question is, my question would be, in terms of in response to suicide, how does Jesus help us to live within this conflict? Uh, because I do see how immortality would address the fear of death, but what about the fear of life? Uh, but we this is just the first chapter, and there's pretty much more to read. And look forward to reading that next chapter. Hope you can join me. And always, thanks for watching the Thought Dakota podcast. I'm Sean Mixon. Always remember to think better.